I need to play you two bits of tape. Jonathan Capehart and the president talking on Saturday, Jake Sullivan talking yesterday in the White House press corps. Here's cut number one, the president talking with Jonathan Capehart on Saturday. It is cut
What
number
is
28.
your red line with Prime Minister Netanyahu? Do you have a red line? For instance, would invasion of Rafah, which you have urged him not to do, would that be a red line?
It is a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical. So there's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. They don't have. But there's red lines that if he crosses, you cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead as a consequence of going after. There's other ways to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas. It's like look, the first time I went over, I sat with them and I sat with the war cabinet. I said, look, don't make the mistake America made. America made a mistake. We went after bin Laden until we got him. But we shouldn't have gone into Ukraine. I mean, we shouldn't have gone into the whole thing in Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary. It just caused more problems than it raised, than it cured.
Okay, and then this is Jake Sullivan yesterday, Noah, cut number 29.
Do you have a red line? For instance, would invasion of Rafah, which you have urged him not to do, would that be a red line? And he answered definitively, it's a red line.
Well, I think you stopped conveniently after a single sentence, and it may not have exactly been that sentence.
Israel, the defense of Israel
And
is still
keep going, and if you read the full answer, and I'm just going to leave it at his answer because I think he put it in his words, the way he wants to communicate this issue, and the way that he's talking to the Israelis as well. And again, I just want to point out that the whole issue of the red line, as you all define it, is something that you guys like. It's almost become a bit of a national security parlor game. For the president, he's really focused on the substance, on the policy, on his concern about the protection of civilians, and about Israel being able to sustain a campaign in a way that ultimately leads to an outcome in which the people of Israel are secure, Hamas is crushed, and there is a long-term solution to stability and peace in the region. He believes there is a path to do that, and that path does not lie in smashing into Rafah, where there are 1.3 million people, in the absence of a credible plan to deal with the population there. And again, as things stand today, we have not seen what that plan is.
Okay, Noah Rothman, can you please translate the president and his national security advisor in combo?
Well, Jake Sherman actually does deserve a lot of credit for full-throated moral clarity of the sort we just do not hear from this administration very often. He went, in that press conference, went after Hamas pretty hard, deservedly so.
Jake Sullivan, not Jake Sherman. He works for
Jake Sullivan. I'm sorry.
Punch Bowl.
Yes.
Jake Sullivan. There you go.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, but I mean, he went on. He was criticizing the media in that as well. He criticized the media in that clip. Criticized the media for not focusing on Hamas's complicity in this situation and being the obstacle to the release of hostages. Look inward, Mr. National Security Advisor. Where's the media getting its misconceptions from? It's getting it from the president and his subordinates. That sort of comments, and Joe Biden has been good for most of his administration avoiding his predecessors, his Democratic predecessors' biggest folly, which was drawing red lines that he was not prepared to follow through on and didn't actually mean. He did so in that conversation, and the administration at functionary levels has been walking it back over the course of the last 24, 48 hours. We've heard people in the national security establishment say, well, Israel can go into Rafah. We're not saying it can't go into Rafah, but they can't go in with the kind of force necessary to eliminate the remaining battalions there, which the United States estimates to be about 3,000 Hamas fighters. Now, if you think about that, there's 3,000 Hamas fighters roughly left in Rafah. That means that they have eliminated what the estimates were at the national security level in the United States at the start of this campaign, which was about 25,000 per estimates. That invalidates the notion that is being bandied about by Joe Biden and others, that most of the casualties retailed by Hamas, by the Gaza Health Ministry, are civilian. Those numbers just don't make sense. And that actually comports with a tablet analysis that performed a regression analysis on Hamas's statistics and found them to be utterly laughable, untethered to anything resembling a statistical reality. So the administration
But the president uses them. Noah, the president and Jake Sullivan uses those terrible numbers from the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is a Hamas propaganda unit. There are surely innocent deaths. innocent civilians have been killed. But the 30,000 number is just made up, and it was a straight line progression until Hamas figured out they weren't fooling anyone.
Well, they are fooling them. They're fooling a lot of people, unfortunately, people who want to be fooled. The administration's
True.
problem is they're trying to have it both ways. They want to have...
I want to contrast it with last night. George W. Bush was in Yorba Linda, California, being interviewed by Robert O'Brien, the National Security Advisor under President Trump. And W, I miss his bluntness and his clarity. He said, Iran is the most dangerous country in the world right now. Just flat out, they're dangerous. And he said, I don't know why we're giving them $7 billion. That was in the past. I don't know why we're not treating them as the enemy. Clarity, clarity, clarity. Are we ever going to get that from these people, Noah?
No, we're not. The administration is desperately terrified of the prospect of victory. It just is. It needs Israel to win. It needs it to win with all due alacrity. But it can't risk, in its own mind, offending an unappeasable, very small contingent of Americans and people in Western Europe, for example, who don't want to see Israel win. This administration needs to put Iran in its place. Iran is responsible for Hamas is an Iranian proxy. The Shiite militias attacking American soldiers in Iraq and Syria are Iranian proxies. The Houthis are American proxies. They're busily attacking Americans directly, American interests indirectly, and the symbols of American hegemony. And the administration just kind of wants it to go away without doing the things you need to do in order to communicate to an adversary that they're outclassed and that the costs of their destabilizing activity will be higher than the benefits. The administration just simply cannot commit itself to that kind of course for fear of offending people. I think that's really
I would love to hear a reporter ask Jake Sullivan or Admiral Kirby, but preferably Jake Sullivan, can you please tell us how many people died in Mosul in the effort to extirpate ISIS from Mosul? How many buildings were destroyed? What part did America play in that? Why were we silent during Assad's genocide? This administration is anti-Israel. They think they're anti-Netanyahu, but it's 90% of Israel supports the Netanyahu policies, even though Netanyahu is last in the polls. And I realize that, and I know he's got very little chance of surviving the next election, and it will be Benny Gantz or somebody else, maybe Naftali Bennett, maybe some we don't know yet. But the idea that Netanyahu is driving this as opposed to Israel is simply wrong. And it suggests to me that this administration doesn't know its rear end from its nose.
Yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to say anti-Israel, because the argument against it is that in material terms and in behind the scenes, the administration has supported Israel's objectives in ways, and rhetorically at the outset of this conflict, in ways that we haven't seen from other administrations, Republican administrations and Democratic alike. And I'm sensitive to that argument. I don't think it's wholly unfounded. But at the same time, I don't think you can say what we're seeing in public now is just all kabuki theater. The administration is deeply conflicted over allowing Israel the kind of victory that it needs politically. The administration needs Israel to win. And I think they are genuinely internally conflicted over that. They should not be, obviously. And the administration clearly has its priorities conflicted with what it believes to be its domestic priorities. But listen, if this war is continuing into the summer, that's a real political headache for this administration. It needs to commit to Israeli victory now or suffer the consequences later.
My podcasts include Getting Hammered with Mary Catherine and Vic, and Podhoretz and Greenwald and Matt Continetti and Christine Rosen, and usually they'll have Seth on. And John Podhoretz and Abe Greenwald have been arguing for months now whether or not Joe Biden's going to screw Israel. And John Podhoretz says he talks tough, but he gives us all the weapons. And Abe says, no, you're going to screw Israel. Who are you with, Noah?
I've been with Abe for a long time, unfortunately.
You and me both. That's three.
And not because John is wrong. John's not wrong. He's giving due credit to actual events on the ground. He's crediting that over rhetoric. And that's really valuable. But the rhetoric really does matter. And the rhetoric is what the administration wants us to see. Who are we to deny them what they want us to acknowledge, which is their own hostility towards Israel's interests?
The rhetoric is damaging in that it encourages the world to do things like impose boycotts on Israel, not sell Israel what they need, not play games with Israel to try and cast Israel as a pariah state when they are the victim. It's deeply damaging. And last word, do you know it? Do you agree with that? We got about 30 seconds. You think the rhetoric is damaging to Israel?
It is. It's designed to be. What else could it be? The administration wants to cast Israel as having gone above and beyond what it should be doing here, as though any other state would accept these terms and conditions that have been imposed on it by Hamas.